Hey folks, it's Ardwulf. Welcome. We have a pretty special unboxing today. This parcel is large, and it has come from a long way away. And this is the shipping carton. I have been very excited to get my hands on this for some time. So now the challenge is going to be extracting it from this shipping carton, which actually happened with very little trouble. What we have here is Diffraction Entertainment's game Singapore. This is part of the Second World War series, which many have described as a re-envisioning of, or sort of next step of Europa. There were definitely attempts to do that. Having looked at the rules, however, while it definitely shares a lot of Europa DNA, there's some notable differences that I noticed right off the top. So what we have is a very large and quite heavy box. This is not quite twice the size of a standard wargame box. I would say that looks about 2.5 to 3 inches thick. It's probably millimeters because the company's in the UK. Box lid is this kind of flat folding box lid. This is a real small, so we understand the context of what we're going to see in this box. This is a very small press, okay? These guys are, doing it because they're passionate about what they're doing, and we'll take a look at their components, but this kind of flat box is something that we don't see too much. The gamers used to do this kind of box. The advantage of this is it's an advantage in warehousing because the boxes can be stored flat, and it's a lot less space intensive. So that's the lid. Relatively thin lid, but again, we're talking about real small press. So let's look at our contents. We've got some leaflets here. Some advertising. 6 Degrees, the movie connection card game for any number of players or teams. I've seen the website on this. It's £30. Those are GBP. That's probably about $40 right now. Of course, that varies literally day to day. This actually sounds kind of like a fun party game, actually. I loathe party games, by the way. This is something I'd be willing to try. Because it's about movies, and I like movies. So here's a Second World War, the Second World War series. A bunch of these look like the games that are currently in print. So we have, now that's not true, actually. So Barbarossa is the newest product, and it covers the first half of the war, Second World War on the Eastern Front. Vengeance covers the second half. Mare Nostrum is definitely not out. Operation Watchtower is Pacific War stuff, as is Singapore, the one we're going to look at. And I was specifically interested in Singapore because it covers not just the attack on Singapore, right? It covers all the CBI theater and Malaya and a big chunk of India too, should there be action there. So the back here is just some advertising text, really. I'll also mention, in the context of this being a really small press operation, is the games are pretty expensive. They're printed in quite small quantities. Kamikaze and I Shall Return. These things will together, I think, cover both parts, Central Pacific. Then this is Leyte Gulf. And there's a game on the Philippines, too, which I think is out. I remember talking to these guys years and years ago when they were at Origins. It should tell you how long ago that was. And they were still quite a ways away from releasing their first product at the time. And it took a while for that to happen. But now they've been kind of pounding it out. They seem to have the rhythm down. They seem to have the research down. We see the prices here, $325, $385, £325. Like I said, these are quite expensive games. They're also, generally speaking, quite large games. So we have a rule book. A little bit banged up from kicking around in the box, but then this did cross an ocean, too. This is 125 pages, and it is loose leaf, and it's a loose leaf in what I take to be a very barristerly-like style with the 2 holes on the side. You'd have to repunch these to put them in a binder yourself, or you'd just print them out yourself. They're not super small print, but it's fairly small print. Single column. Not a lot of illustrations in here, but we'll get to some of that. Not going to talk about the rules in this video. There will be further video on this game, so stay tuned for that if you want to see more about how it plays. Here we have the Allied replacement schedule. For Southeast Asia, looks like. And the goal here is to cover the entire Second World War, of course, which they're not quite there yet, but like I said, they have been making good progress. As you could tell from 100+ page rules, this is not an introductory game. FYI, if you didn't know. Japanese production and replacements. Here we have scenarios. There's a lot of scenarios here, which is something that I almost always like to see. Well, I mean, I always like to see it, but it doesn't necessarily mean the scenarios are good. But there's a lot of scenarios here. There are discovery scenarios, so these discovery scenarios are pretty small. The other reason I was interested in this is it covers a broad scope. I mean, because of the scope that it covers, you're going to get land action and you're going to get naval action, and obviously air power is going to be very important. The cat is trying to get into the kitchen cupboards even as I speak. So we have kind of the rock on which games of this type are built, the order of battle. Here's the Allied order of battle. It is 70 pages, and you're going to basically run all of your scenarios out of this book with the order of battle. We also have an At Starts booklet. I'm a little unclear as to what this is. Let's look. So this is the setup material for the scenarios, is what it looks like. Yeah. Okay, so that's cool. We have an Axis order of battle. This is 40-ish pages. 40 pages. So again, we get a lot of detailed information here. Here is now this stuff's all on just like regular paper, and I kind of suspect they're doing the printing in-house. This is kind of a display aid. This is the map layout, okay? So yeah, there's a lot of maps. So these are 11 by 17 maps, though. So 4 of these correspond to the area of a quote-unquote standard wargame size map. So right now we're kind of looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, plus a little extra maps in a not exactly conventional arrangement, but that's what you have given the subject matter. We have game charts. This actually kind of looks like errata. Errata and or clarifications. Okay, or notes to some of the other tables. There's a lot of charts here, as you'd expect. Okay, so here you got your ground effect CRT. On the back, you have ground combat results, which is rather nice that there's a whole... there's quite a complex matrix of possible results here. So, yeah, so it's nice to have that. Obviously, you'd want to print those in quantity, I think. You either photocopy them onto a card stock or laminate that one. These are all on pretty much regular paper too, but it's a little thicker than like regular paper, and it's a little smoother. Air combat results. From memory, this looks different than Europa's air CRT, and here's anti-air. This definitely looks different. Terrain effects chart. Okay. As we can also see, this is relatively complex too. Plus you have good, poor, and severe weather. I don't know how often you're going to get severe weather in this theater, but certainly monsoon season could construe as severe weather. And on the back of that, we have more terrain effects chart, plus a large number of different fortification types. Very detailed game. If you want big detail, let me put it this way: if you don't want big detail, this is probably not your bag. I love big detail, however. And from a brief perusal, I don't think the game mechanics look that complicated, even though they're very space hungry in the book. We have additional terrain effects chart, page 3. What this talks about, God, I wish we would have had this for Europa, is these different like shipyard and port types and what you can put in them. That would have been extraordinarily handy at the time. Combat efficiency charts. Okay. So, air and ground. Now the cat is trying to get out of the cabinet. So this looks like it needs more context than I have at this time. Unit replacement charts. General charts. National technical means. Engineer modifiers. National intelligence means. So intelligence is a factor in this game system too. Here's unit breakdown charts and air holding boxes. Obviously you would photocopy that. Unit abilities information chart. This is rather nice to have too, actually. A lot of, I mean, again, super detailed system, but I'm impressed that they put all this stuff on the play aids rather than leaving you to just remember it from the rules by brute force. So it does look like a decent amount of thought went into the charts and the play aids. Naval charts. Naval gunnery. Here's anti-submarine warfare attack chart. There's a lot going on here. More naval charts. Fueling costs. Strategic movement allowances. Depends on the types of vessels you have, which makes perfect sense. So the turns here, I believe, are 2-week turns. National Organic AA chart. So that varies by nationality. More air charts. Ground control to intercept table. So that's neat. You're getting a sense, I think, just from looking at the pieces, of the amount of detail that is present here, which is a great deal. But I am cool with that, and most of my local folks are cool with that too. Weather charts part 1, weather charts part 2. Here is your turn record track and what looks like a weather display. Air stacking charts. Again, you'd want to photocopy several copies of this, actually. Naval combat range display. This is for actually doing the naval combat. A lot of these you definitely would want to photocopy. Looks like we had some small printing issues on that. It's nevertheless, I think, discernible to what it is. This one, which is a very similar chart, does not have that problem at all. Victory conditions on external charts. That's pretty cool. I probably would have put this in a booklet rather than having it be loose leaf, considering that it's all just on paper and you have to pretty much photocopy them anyway. So here we have our unit identification table along with generic counter identification. And then on the back you have, here's what all the factors and things on the counters mean. And then you have a national color identifier. This appears to be for most of the world. I think it's missing. Certainly, we're getting plenty from plenty on this. More than I think is likely to appear in this game. Let me put it that way. But it doesn't look like you got everything here either. And there's more of that on the back. And here's your terrain key, along with some more national colors. So now we get to, whoa, okay, there's a lot of stuff here, man. We get to counters. Now, one of the things that I had heard, and this absolutely bears some resemblance to what I see here, is the counters are very thin. And I am forced to agree with that. They are quite thin. I have actually seen super thin counters on a couple of old GMT games. My copy of Great Battles of Julius Caesar is like that. These are thinner than that. So bear that in mind. That said, there's a lot. I think there's 12 counter sheets here. Looks like there's 10 counter sheets. So that's 2,800 counters. These are your Commonwealth. Not sure what that is. More Commonwealth. This looks like Thailand. This is going to be Japanese. Going to be quite a bit of Japanese. This looks like Royal Navy, judging from the names of the ships, or Commonwealth, and various Commonwealth navies. Here you have your Dutch. Here, and it's a white core stock. It looks like it's printed on a rolling type of mechanism because you've got little nibs here. I don't see center nibs or anything like that on here, so that's good. Definitely won't have any trouble punching these out, it looks like. Here we have our Navy. This has got to be more Royal Navy and or Commonwealth Navies. Here we have what definitely looks like Commonwealth Royal Air Force, maybe? Yeah, these would be a U.S. Air Force or U.S. Army Air Force. These would be Commonwealth Air, which are a different color than the Commonwealth Navy and the Commonwealth Ground. These red guys are Japanese naval. Here's more American Air. Of course, the Commonwealth is going to be pretty prominent in this theater. More Japanese Navy. Looks like we have more Japanese Navy, including Naval Air. More Japanese. Presumably the yellow air is Japanese Army Air, and the red air is Japanese Navy Air. And the counters, I mean, so these are old school counters, right? I mean, there's no question about that. But they look pretty good. The factors don't look too small. I'm not having problems. I have pretty bad vision these days. I'm not really having much problem reading anything on these counters except the names of the aircraft from this distance. And I'm not super close. Here we have all kinds of stuff. U.S. Army, more U.S. Army, more Royal Navy, more Japanese Navy, and here we have some general markers. Just one sheet of those. The density on this shouldn't be too bad. And one of the other things that attracted me to this particular volume in the series, of course, is that there's a lot of scenarios, and wow, okay. And so it can scale up or down to fit your space and or interest level, which I like. Okay, so I am absolutely full of nonsense about these being 11 by 17 maps. These are totally not 11 by 17 maps. These are kind of GDW sized maps, actually. They're smaller than like a full size standard wargame map, which is generally 23 by 34. This one, believe it or not, for completely non-wargame related reasons, I happen to have a yardstick sitting here. So these are 26 by probably 18. So that makes the map area on this thing be even bigger, actually. Quite large. Now the maps are on this quite thick and pretty nice feeling. It almost feels like a vinyl surface. Kind of like that. And here we have, now some people have had negative things to say about the maps too, but while they're definitely old school, and this definitely is quite busy, I don't mind these maps. I have seen these maps of the series games in the past, and I like them. That said, they're not visually the kind of maps you tend to see anymore. There's Brunei. So you are getting my misconception. Here's a blank Indian Ocean map. My notion that these were 11 by 17 maps turns out to be totally false, and therefore this is a truly, genuinely enormous map area. Here's Ceylon or Sri Lanka. I can never remember which one is the old name and which one is the new name. I thought Sri Lanka was the old name. Another thing with this is that definitely differs from Europa is that it This is part of India. As you can see, Hyderabad is here. Something I can't quite read is there. Here's Madras. Here's Bombay and Hyderabad. This is Hyderabad, the province then. Here is part of Borneo. Enormous map area. This is glorious. You'll recognize this if you played a Vietnam game. Here is French, what was then at the time French Indochina. It's marked as Vietnam, French Vietnam. That's a lot of maps, man. Here's part of that peninsula. Here's the Mekong Delta part of Vietnam. I'm not sure how much of this map you're going to be able to see in the camera. I have the camera as high as it will go on my mount. This looks like part of India. Totally does. So you're getting a really now we're getting into Dutch East Indies type of area here. Here is a small map piece. You definitely probably, I think, want to make sure that if you're going to play this may or may not be true for other games. Here's Celebes. Other games in the series, but because there's so much sea area and it's a dark sea area color, I definitely think you want a good lighting situation. I mean, wow. When I don't believe I've ever seen a Celebes at this kind of scale. Here's another blank Indian Ocean map. Here we have Sumatra, Thailand, or Malaya, I should say, not Sumatra. Singapore is down here in the corner. I think that's probably just out of frame on the camera. Here we have a lot more stuff. Parts of Borneo, about half of Borneo. Here's that northern end of that same peninsula. Burma, Rangoon is right here. Definitely going to take a while to play this. Here's once again parts of India. Calcutta's right here. So here's another smaller map. I'll get to that in a second. Looks like we're done with full-size maps, believe it or not. So smaller maps. Almost blank. There's some land in the corner. And here's Timor. We have another smaller map here. That is part of Java. So enormous map content. There's going to be some really good questions about how best to organize this. I, at this point, feel like normally I would say it's probably an out-of-the-box counter storage solution, but because the box is so big, that might not be the case. However, I think in this case, I think the rules actually, because there's a lot of paper in this, the rules actually get stored outside the box, and maybe I can get all the counters in the box. I mean, it's 10 counter sheets. It's not a small game. But I've gotten 10 counter sheets in a box smaller than this before too. Then again, the maps take up a lot of space on their own. Like I said, I think a lot of people are going to probably say these maps are busy and hard to read, and certainly like this text right here in the current light, I'm having a little trouble with that. But generally speaking, I think the maps look completely functional to me, and I have no particular cause to complain. I mean, after all, it should be, well, I like attractive components as much as anybody. It ultimately boils down to, is the game good? You can have very attractive components, and if you don't like the game, it doesn't matter. Huge quantity of material here. So, and I got to try to make sure I'm not, folding these two at a time, and B, catching them on my camera stand, which I just did. Map quality, I mean, in terms of the map quality, the paper quality and all that, looks really very nice. The counters are, I'll be honest, thin. I guess that's a effect of the printing process that they use with these. On the plus side, and I believe it's been explained, I could be misremembering this, I believe it's been explained as the printing process, they went with a printing process that results in thinner counters, but with which registration issues do not occur. And I will say that the registration looks dead on everywhere, and I don't know that the counters are so thin that it will be a problem in play. You're going to play this with tweezers, right? You're not going to play this just with your fat, clumsy, sausage-like fingers. Certainly not with my fat, clumsy, sausage-like fingers. But yeah, I mean, if I had a criticism, for a game with this amount of paper, I'd probably rather see that paper be loose leaf rather than bound into booklets. So I think that's actually a good move. Might actually be viable, and you may be able to get the stuff this way for all I know, to buy the maps and counters and just print all the additional supplementary material yourself from PDF. That's actually quite a viable solution, I think. I don't know if that's available or not. I'm going to include a link to the product page on the parent company is called the Knowledge Company of Diffraction Entertainment. I'm going to include that down here, but in the meantime, I will completely understand if somebody says this is a lot to bite off, and it is. But if you are interested, check out the product page, and you can check out the other games in the series that are also available. And like I mentioned, there is going to be additional video on this in the coming weeks. I'm not promising any specific schedule here, but you will definitely see within the next several weeks, I will say several weeks, you'll see additional video on this. We'll fire up one of the smaller scenarios and give it a whirl and see if we can suss out the system. So I want to thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed the video, please do give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe to the channel and click the bell icon for notifications when new video content shows up. And please check out the Patreon if you're so inclined. Until later, happy wargaming.